sending me? Because actually I had light brown hair, but my sister had very dark hair. So when I get to Buffalo, of course, there were people of Italian descent, Irish descent, Oriental descent. So the guy in Miami either didn't know what he was talking about, or he just was teasing, which I thought was pretty nasty. But anyways, so we learned fast. Buffalo was okay. So we arrived in Buffalo, and we were taken to an orphanage, the Immaculate Heart of Mary home. If you have seen the movie Doubt, you can get a pretty good idea of what that building was like. It was the dark hallways, the floors that squeaked when you walked on them, very unlike Cuba, very unlike our houses in Cuba. But we got used to it. The worst part about, well, my sister was in a floor different than I because of the difference in ages. And we used to see each other like on Sunday Mass and some afternoons after school, but it was not all the time. The worst part was getting used to the lack of privacy and the lack of control over your life. For example, I hated having to take my underwear and throw it in a giant washing machine together with all the underwear of all the other girls to get it washed. So one day I started washing it on the sink and then hanging it from the railings around the bed. But of course, one of the nuns would come, would pick it up and throw it in the washing machine. So, can't win. Also, our letters were always, letters from Cuba were always open and read before they were given to us. Today, I kind of understand that, but at the time, even for a 13-year-old, you know, that was like invading your space. I remember that, I said, what is this? They're reading my letters before they get to me. But that was just part of what they had to do there. I remember one day, like I said, my sister was in a different floor than I. One day I don't know how she made it, but she comes running up to me to where I was. She was crying hysterically. And she said, Eloísita, look what they've done to me. They took her to the hairdressers, and they gave her a haircut that made her almost bald. And I kept going, but what is this? What is it? She cried for days. And I was so angry that, first of all, they had taken her to get a haircut without me, her older sister, and that they had done it the way they did it. I'll never forget that. These little things that just stay in your mind. But there were nice things about the orphanage also. The nun that was in charge of my floor, Sister Mary Dennis, was very nice and very kind. Every night after dinner, she would sit down with me and would give me English lessons. And also, I used to go to a school. My sister used to attend school in the orphanage, and I used to walk to school a few blocks with another girl from the orphanage. We attended 8th grade. And I used to enjoy those walks a lot because even though it was cold, the scenery was so different from Cuba. It was the brown brick building houses with pointed roofs and the tall, mature trees, and it was just so different. And I remember that I enjoyed that very much. And to this day, whenever I go up north to visit friends or something and I see that same environment, it reminds me of Buffalo when I first saw that. I remember one day, Sister Mary Dennis said to me, she tried to encourage me to join the Girl Scouts in the orphanage. And when I saw the girls with the bandanas and the caps, I thought immediately about the militia expedition back in Cuba. One of the reasons why our parents had gotten out of there. And I said to the nun, I said, well, I'm going to call, because we were able to call Cuba. I don't remember how often, but we could do that. Or our parents could call us. And I said, well, I'm going to call Cuba. I'm going to call my mom to ask her for her permission to join Girl Scouts. And the nun must have read my mind because she said, okay, tell your mom that I say it's good, no politics. So I never got to decide because after a few days, they told us that we were going to be transferred to a foster home. I told them I didn't want to go to the foster home because I guess in my mind I was thinking, I'm in the orphanage, it's not my home. I'm going to be going to a foster home, which is not my home either, so why move? Plus, in the back of my mind, I knew that soon we would be reuniting with our parents. But nobody listens to a 13-year-old, so to the foster home we went.
How long were you in that place?
2 months. In the orphanage, 2 months. This is the foster home. And this photo was taken about 3 years ago by the sister of a friend of mine who lives in Buffalo. And this is amazing. I mean, in my mind, this was the same as it did about over 50 years ago. And this was all taken 3 years ago. The family in the foster home was fine. They were nice. They were a nice family, very decent. But I didn't feel warm. They had a daughter that was 1 year younger than I, and there was friction between her and my sister and I. There was competition for school grades and for friends' attention. And so I just, I just wasn't feeling that warm. I know Pedro Pans who lived in foster homes and they felt like they were part of the family. That was not the way it was with me. Also, the lady there, even though we were learning English, the lady in the house didn't like my sister and I to speak Spanish between ourselves. Even in our bedroom, she didn't like us to do that. So, okay, we attended parochial school near the house and St. Leo's School. This is St. Leo's School. That was taken the summer about 3 years ago again. Look, same school that I attended over 50 years ago. Look how well it has been preserved. And everybody in school in St. Leo's was wonderful to us. The kids, the teachers, everybody. One day we participated in a school play, and I played the piano solo, and everybody was so amazed at how talented these Cuban girls were. So I want to make sure that
was still in Buffalo.
yeah. Okay, so then finally, after living in Buffalo a total of 9 months, 2 months in the orphanage and 7 months in the foster home, we were able to come to Miami and reunite with our parents. And then there, we began our new life as the typical exiles in Cuba in those days, which a lot of you probably can identify with. And this is the end of my presentation. I want to thank my parents for having made the decision that they made at the time that they made it, the way they made it, because they had no alternative. And if they hadn't done that, who knows where I would be. I also would like to thank the Catholic Church for having administered our program, to the United States for having funded the program, and above all, I'd like to thank God, because without His guidance and protection, I wouldn't be here today. So this is it. Thank you. Raise your hands. Oh, I would like to have a picture taken at the end with all the Pedro Pans here.
Would anyone like to share the story very shortly? I mean, if it's all right.
Yeah, first, any questions? Okay, okay.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Well, it was sort of just a question towards all the Pedro Pans in general, like, because looking at your story, I could tell like it was very adventurous, from 2 months you have to go here, then 2 months you have to go there, and that. Was that basically a similar experience for all Pedro Pans, or was there any points where,
There are a lot of variations.
A lot of variations, I see.
Yeah, well, half of the 14,000 stayed in Miami when they arrived because they had friends or relatives. Remember, by end of 1960, 1961, there were a lot of Cubans in Miami already, because from the moment that Castro took over, a lot of them realized what was going to be happening, and they started coming to Miami. So when the Pedro Pan children started coming, a lot of them had friends or relatives here, so they went to live with the relatives, and then that ended their Pedro Pan life. Okay, but the other half were protected by the Pedro Pan program. Some of them just stayed in the orphanage in the camps until their parents came. Some of them went to a foster home. Some of them went to, different variations. Anybody has something different that would like to?
What happened to your cousin?
Oh, okay, good question. About the same time when my sister and I were sent to Buffalo, they were sent to Richmond, Virginia, to an orphanage there.
Who?
My little cousins, yeah, to Richmond, Virginia. And then when their father came, then he picked them up and they moved to Puerto Rico. And they lived there. Well, 2 of them passed away already. Illnesses. Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to give you my, I don't know if
That
that's a
mean-
good question.
that's
I'd like to give you my version from the younger sister point of view, because you were the older sister. None. I think my sister was traumatized by that.
She was your older sister?
She's older, 4 years older, actually. So we were 10 and 14 in September of '61. We were also at your camp at Kendall for a week, and we were sent to Michigan to an orphanage. 19 of us, actually, and we do meet here, like at least 10 or 12 of us meet all the time after we, got together. Everybody went everywhere else, and then at the 50-year reunion, we kind of,
Yes.
got together because some stayed in Michigan and some didn't. But I, of course, had my older sister. So from my perspective, I had no, like you said, I had no fear. It was an adventure. My sister and I were going somewhere. Then the orphanage was kind of like, and we got there and like the next month it was snowing.
Did they separate you?
No,
You were the same?
no, because we were 10 and 14. There were
You were
5 of
closer.
us in a room, in a single bed in a
Mhm.
room. But it was the thing that hit me was they wouldn't let you take a shower. You had to do the little cleanup deal, and so we would actually set up our alarms and get up like at 11 o'clock, because we had to be in bed by like 8. Get up at 5:36, go to mass, and then, have breakfast and go to school. But the thing was, the food was different.
Oh,
All
yeah,
of these
well.
things were hitting you, and nobody knew the language. We were starting all over. But I think for her, I think it was like, and that's how I feel, that there was a resentment there. You're talking about. I'm also very glad that my parents did what they did and chose what they did. I think throughout the years, I've seen that, like a resentment of like, my whole life was like taken, and then I was responsible for a younger
Yeah,
sibling.
but then after that, we had time to recuperate and all that.
And then of
In
course,
my
yeah,
case-
we met our parents in about a year's time.
Yeah,
We didn't go to a foster home, but we had a family that I'm still in touch with. She's 88, he's passed away, and with their daughters, because they took us out for Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, and they were amazing.
Professor Blanco, did you have a question?
Yeah.
It's just a question. I noticed that in the title you said largest unaccompanied children exodus in the Western Hemisphere. And one thing that has always been in my mind, if those that designed this project had somehow in the back of their minds, the experience of the Jews that send their children in the kinder train.
Yes,
Right.
they did. As a matter of fact, this presentation is 20 minutes. It's in YouTube, so you don't even have to have me over. You can just watch it in YouTube. And also my story with more details is on the Miami Herald Pedro Pan network. You go to my profile page and you have my personal story even longer with more details. So this is 20 minutes. It's in YouTube. I have a 35-minute presentation in YouTube also, and it talks about that. One of the fears of the parents in Cuba was that the same thing that happened to the German children would happen, that they were sent away to Russia. And some of them never saw their children again or something like that. That was in their minds. In the back, she had hand raised first.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I just had a question. What was the message given to the children throughout all the process from those that were your caregivers during that time in the United States, in terms of your parents, what the outcome was, what the outlook was?
You mean,
What were you
like,
told?
you mean when we were like in the foster home
And you were in the group home, foster home, yeah, the whole process. What, or was information even given in terms of?
No, but from what I remember, that was over 50 years ago. No, we were busy with our daily lives. And we told our parents, oh yes, we'll be there soon. Oh yes, this and that. But, you know, what, I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen. So actually, some of us felt in limbo.
Right.
But then now, we were in the United States, we had to learn English, we had to go to school, this is our new life. And, you know, when our parents come, we'll be happier. In the meantime, what can we do?
Particularly in the missile crisis, when we thought we would never see anybody again. You know, in the missile crisis, we were in a school in Iowa, and everybody left school. It was a boarding school. Everybody went home because they thought the world was coming to an end. Okay, so we thought we'll never see our parents
That's
again.
it.
You know, that's it, isn't it true? And we were never told anything. You know, we had no idea that there was a Pedro Pan operation. We were not the object of anything that was planned.
Oh, yeah,
No, we didn't know that.
And I was glad I came, and I wanted to come and all that, and I was very grateful. But we were in limbo, like you said.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when I came back to Miami after 9 months, of course I didn't know about Pedro Pan. I didn't know that I was part of a big deal.
No, you never
Or
know.
of a big thing. But I was so, no sé, triste, sad,
Mhm.
because of even though everybody treated me well, you know, I was so sad that I took all the photos, that's why I love so many. I took all the photos that I had and letters that I had, and I tore them up.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
I have.
Of course, I wish I hadn't done that, but I said, well, this is my new life, I want to put everything behind me.
Yeah.
And I told my mother, I said, because I think the lady wrote her a letter or something, and I said to my mother, don't ask me questions about that. You know, I don't want to talk about it. And my mother, you know, they always listen to me and say, okay, fine, so we'll move on. Yes.
I think if you talk to most of us that left, you know, unaccompanied.
Are you
think-
Pedro Pan?
I left by myself, not through a visa waiver, because somebody claimed me, but I was alone for a year and a half.
And
So
you
I
came
got-
without
I
your
got to work.
parents?
Yeah.
Surprise,
Yeah,
you're Pedro Pan.
I know my husband is, he was in an orphanage also, and he didn't see his parents for 8 years, because his father was in jail in Cuba. But our children that are now grown-ups, and my grandchildren, especially one of my daughters is a psychologist, she tells me that when she sees all of us talking, you know, because we all meet, like you said, you know, the groups,
Right.
she sees and she feels sort of like a breaking in our lives. Even though we're very happy, we've gone to school, we fulfill ourselves, there's always a longing
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
a
My
disconnect.
kids feel that
Yeah.
too.
Disconnect.
Disconnect is.
My sister, who was younger, you know, I would protect her. And she has been living in California most of her adult life. She doesn't want to talk about Pedro Pan. Maybe if she were in Miami, it'd be different. Who knows? Maybe if I had been living in another state most of my life, I wouldn't want to talk about Pedro Pan either. Here, I can't help it, you know. So I said, well, if you can't lick him, join him and start doing research. So, but she doesn't want to talk about it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Elena.
Okay, my first comment is an answer, which you answered well, but to your question, there is a book that's called Fleeing Castro by Victor Andres CRI, who is a professor of history. It's a thin book, but it has the history of Operation Pedro Pan very well documented. And he speaks of Father Walsh, and the people that worked with him were aware of other movements of children, and specifically I remember them mentioning some Hungarian children that had left same, in a home that practiced the same religion that the children had. That didn't happen all the time, but that's what they tried to do. And as far as were we told anything, well, we went to school, we learned English, we watched TV, and we read. And it's interesting that you would ask that because, and I corresponded with my parents. Unlike Eloísa, I still have all the letters because my parents send the letters back to me. So I have them and it's my treasure. But I have a letter where I'm telling my parents what's happening. So I'm telling my parents this is going on and all that. So it was like, not only was I getting stuff from them, they had to be very careful on what to say because there was a lot of censorship in Cuba. But I told them what was happening here in the United States. And I have letters from, or my diary of the missile crisis. And I just say stuff that's happening. And like you said, I thought I was never going to see my parents again. As far as the disconnect is concerned, the disconnect, I think, is the feeling of every Cuban that lived at that time. Because our lives, whether you were a Pedro or you were like my brother who was older and came on his own, whether you were like my parents, I think my parents suffered more because they lost everything and had to restart at an older age. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
And
Lena.
my main thing, thank you, Eloísa, because what you said, I think expresses my feeling, but I feel it in other people that have talked,
Oh, yeah.
that we're grateful. I am very grateful to my parents, to the Catholic Church, to this country, and to God.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Duane, did you want to ask a
I
question?
just wanted to follow up on the issue of religion, because the numbers that you mentioned suggest that a lot of children were not Catholic. So were they set up with Jewish and Protestant families?
They tried, the Jewish, most of the, I don't know if you know Marcos Kerbel, he's a professor here. The Jewish children were, I think there were over 200, something like that. They came to Miami and right away they were met by the Hebrew agency. And most of them were sent to places, in other places in the United States, under the auspices of the Jewish agency. Some Protestant children also were met, because I have a log that was kept by George Warch, and that log tells you what, who picked up each child. Many of them were picked up by the Protestant agency. So they tried to, even though it was the minority, so they tried to keep them within their faith. Yes, Georgina?
Okay, I want to thank you first of all for the documentation that you have, shown.
This was not easy. Let me tell you, I didn't know how to do a PowerPoint before I started working on this.
Yeah, I know, it's
And
very,
the
very
narration.
But you have put the blame of what has happened to us on the right people, not our parents, not the American government. It was the Castro regime and their dictatorship that brought us here. We made lemonade out of lemons.
That's right.
like I always say. And I wanted to say that to me, this has been a very positive experience. I am very grateful that I went through this. We cleaned that school from top to bottom, and we learned how to work. We learned how to live the American way of life back when. And I'm very grateful for that. And I appreciate everybody who works, from cleaning floors to, because I went through that too. I did my share of work. I went to school. I educated myself. We have worked our lives very hard throughout all our lives. And I would not be alive if I had been left. Yeah, I had been left.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Georgina and her sister, her sister is not here today, but may I tell them about your sister? Georgina's sister is Marisela Verena, the Cuban singer, very talented Cuban singer. And maybe someday she can come to one of the presentations.
She doesn't need to talk about it, and I'm the oldest, and I feel for your sister because I felt responsible.
It's a
I have a
responsibility.
brother and a sister, and I always felt responsible for them. I felt a burden, but I was glad to take it upon me them, I wanna leave, I can't, I felt,
How old were you?
I was, when the Castro,
Yeah,
When
13,
you, when
when
Pedro
I
Pan,
came over, I was 15.
15. Ria, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, if I calculated, then your parents came out in 1962, so that was before the freedom flights?
Before the freedom flights.
So they came through because of the visa?
Well, let me
Well,
tell you
That's why I
about,
was wondering how you had to ask for your
well,
parents to
the
come
thing
out.
about my parents is a little bit different, and I don't have time to go into details, but this is in the Miami Herald profile page that I have. My father was already here in Miami. My father had come a few weeks earlier because he had a visa, and he didn't want to let the visa expire, so he came to the United States. And when we arrived, he couldn't make it to the airport. They took us to Kendall. He went to see us at the Kendall camp, and he tried to get us out, but then they talked, they had a conversation, and then it was decided that the best thing for us was to stay in the program, because my father was living in a little room on Little Havana. He didn't have a job, anything, so if he took us over, it was going to be another problem. So it was, and this happened to some Pedro Pans too. Then we were sent to Buffalo. My mother came 2 months later, in November, so they were both here 2 months later. That's a different, now here comes another story. That's, I think, the saddest, well, then began the roller coaster ride for me and for my sister, mostly for me. Because when my mother came, I wanted to come back to Miami to reunite with them. And they said, well, no, you shouldn't, because you should wait for the school year to be over. Okay, then it was like, well, maybe your little sister will come down. Okay, my sister got very excited, blah, blah, blah. And then, no, that's not going to be a good idea. Oh, hi, Joe, I didn't see you. No, that may not be a good idea. You should stay there. And we were like that, going back and forth for 7 months. And and I had remembered that, but then the other day, I read my case file. I'm one of the lucky, if I want to call it lucky, of the Pedro Pans that were able to get a copy of the case file from Barry University. Now nobody can get a copy. And not all the case files are as documented as some others. Mine was pretty documented. And I read all the letters, because remember, at that time, there was no internet, no emails, and probably phone calls were too expensive for Catholic Charities, which I understand. But anyways, I had the letters from Catholic Charities here to Buffalo. Well, Mr. Echazábal came and he said, yes, he wants their daughters to come back. Fine. Okay, letter. Okay, fine, we'll send them back. Then another letter. No, they decided that it's better for them to stay there and wait out the school year. Then another. So there was like 4 or 5 or 6 letters going back and forth. Do we come back to Miami? Do we stay in Buffalo? And that was really a little traumatic for us. I know they thought they were doing the right thing. But sometimes I wonder, I said, well, if they went to talk to the schools in Miami, the same way we were learning English in Buffalo, we were in school there, couldn't we have just make the short trip and continue going to school here? But that was over 50 years ago. But that's another thing that really
Well, I asked because I had understood that a lot of the children had to ask for their parents to come out. So
Well,
the children had to write letters.
Yes.
Once they were here.
Yes, once they arrived in Miami, in the Catholic Welfare Bureau, they started the process to claim the parents, because I remember at that time the process was that somebody in the United States had to send them a visa or claim them, but I do know that because I've been told that and I've read that. Once they arrived, the paperwork was started to claim the parents. In my case, that was not necessary because my father was here and my mother already, came in soon. Maybe we claimed our mother too. So, and that expedited the trip. I don't know how much
Eloísa,
time we have.
can I make
Yes,
a
of
comment?
course.
I think I saw your presentation on YouTube, it was an excellent presentation, so we look forward to coming here. My wife is a Pedro Pan. But what I want to mention is something that you haven't mentioned in your presentation, maybe it wasn't part of the subject, but the people who sacrifice themselves to bring all these kids over, they sacrifice